Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nick Gowing, your chair for the 11th Sustainable Innovation Forum, host for 5 days of 3-hour sessions of dialogue and debate, taking us to the cutting edge of where sustainability is now, where the climate emergency is taking us. Right now, of course, many of us should be in Glasgow for the meeting in person for the UNFCCC's 26th Conference of the Parties, the COP26. But instead, we're all grappling with the more immediate threat of the COVID-19 emergency, that global health emergency. Environmental diplomacy has to some extent been put on hold, but we can't just postpone the climate emergency as if it's not happening. Momentum has to be maintained. It has to be intensified. There are signs that this is now possible, particularly with the political developments in the US and the new commitment from China. This is what is driving this Sustainable Innovation Forum. This is why we are here this week.
Global warming is the next existential threat to humanity. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. We don't have plenty of time.
So let me underline that last graphic, those 5 points you saw: showcasing innovation, building momentum, raising ambition, shaping policy, and above all, enabling partnerships, bringing more of you together, maybe people you've never spoken to before. What is going to happen over the next 5 days? Well, here we go. We're going to be talking in the next 5 days, first of all today, on climate policy and finance, day one. Second, energy transition, that's on Tuesday. On day 3, sustainable mobility and the youth agenda. Critical, that youth agenda, the next generation. Fourthly, industry transition. And fifthly, on Friday, land use and agriculture, with a particular intervention from His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales. This week, all this is framed by 2 horizons. We can call them 2 horizons. First, what must the next 12 months achieve ahead of COP26 in Glasgow? Which reinforces the second question. We've now entered the decade for action. Will the decisions we make today really align the world to the goals of the Paris Agreement 5 years ago? Will we deliver, and can we deliver? A little bit at this point about climate action. Formed in 2007, climate action is set up to unite, to bring together the private, public, and NGO communities for this critical issue of sustainability through digital and live platforms. Digital like today, live like we've been doing up until the COVID-19 epidemic has hit us all. Building stronger partnerships and communities, accelerating international sustainable development, emphasis there on the word accelerate, and advancing the Paris Agreement. We now assume, as I said earlier, with full US engagement under a Biden administration and a new declaration of a Chinese commitment. Well, this year, CIF 2020 forms part of climate action's much wider roadmap to the COP26. That is the Sustainable Innovation Forum 2020, That is COP26 in Glasgow. But you can see the history here, the heritage that has been built up for this process of the Sustainable Innovation Forum, right from COP16 in Cancun through Durban, Doha, Warsaw, Lima, Paris, Marrakesh, Bonn, Katowice, Madrid, and hopefully Glasgow next year. It's designed to get all of you together, and please feel you are part of that process. Join us on this roadmap to COP26. So what are we going to be talking about on day one? As the world really works to rebuild at the moment, will the decisions we make today keep us on track for net zero and in line with 2030 targets? 2030 targets. The session today covers three distinct topics: the Green New Deal, the global Green New Deal, decision-making for greater climate ambition under all those umbrellas that I've been highlighting for you already, and the green fiscal stimulus. So what's the agenda for the next 3 hours on this day one? First, we'll hear from this week's headline partner, BMW Group, on their new journey to create mobility which is appropriate for a green recovery. Our first virtual panel will debate if a global Green Deal is even possible right now. Is it possible? Then we'll be joined by a senior executive from SAP, the giant accounting software group. How can changing software design actually force corporates to realign the way they judge success, not just by profit, but success? What kind of metrics? That's fascinating. Then we'll have a 45-minute break and a live discussion after that with UNEP, with the Finance Initiative, and also Oliver Wyman, who are the global leaders in management and risk consulting. The question for them: are businesses taking climate risk seriously? Are businesses taking climate risk seriously? Then we'll round off today with another panel chaired by Nick Robbins from the Grantham Institute at the London School of Economics. He'll steer today's final panel of financial stakeholders, and asking the question, can the green stimulus close the 2.5 trillion SDG investment gap? And there's been a remarkable conference in the last week here in London on the green horizons. Remarkable push forward by the financial community. That'll be reflected in this panel at the end of today. Before we move into those live sessions, we have a message from Ban Ki-moon. He's president and chair of the Global Green Growth Institute. And of course, he was the 8th UN Secretary General. Ban Ki-moon.
Greetings to all taking part in this 2020 Sustainable Innovation Forum. 2020 was meant to usher in a decade of climate action. However, we have faced another threat, COVID-19, and we will face more suffering as a result of this pandemic in the months to come. But we must not pause our action on climate change. The climate emergency remains one of the greatest existential threats facing humanity. We stand at a crossroads. Historically, while pandemics have caused great loss and suffering, they have also galvanized change. As we consider our present challenges, we must also question which parts of the business as usual are worth returning to when we come out of the pandemic. We do not stand at this juncture with no roadmap. We already have a framework for action: the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on climate change. The SDGs recognize the need for interconnected solutions. The Paris Agreement can help guide us in ensuring our economic recovery is based on policies that promote green growth, protect biodiversity, and embrace renewable energy. The science tells us that the window of opportunity to address climate change is closing. While COP26 in Glasgow has been delayed, our action must not be. We have a chance in the economic recovery from COVID-19 to encourage leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions, and investors to create a healthy, resilient, and zero emissions future. The United Nations Secretary General has set out clear principles to guide the recovery. Fiscal firepower must drive a shift from the gray to a green economy. We must use this moment to end investment in fossil fuel extraction and instead focus on renewable energy and clean technologies. There is no place for coal. And in our global recovery, we must leave no one behind. Vulnerable nations are facing an unprecedented collective threat to human life, livelihoods, and economic devastation. If poorer countries are to be able to afford a green recovery from COVID-19, they need financial support to do so. And we do not want a case where countries put substantial investment into renewable energy at home whilst still financing their companies to export fossil fuel worldwide. Finally, to achieve any of this, we must work together as an international community. The climate crisis is not just a crisis for the climate. Without adequate collective action, we must unraveling decades of hard-earned progress on improving global health, tackling poverty, and reducing inequalities. But if we get things right, we can steer a sustainable and inclusive global recovery for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Moon. There must be adequate collective action on multiple fronts, he was underscoring.